Welcome to Live Art. Geronimus van Aken, Hertogenbosch, circa 1450 to 1516, familiarly known as Joan and better known as Geronimus Bosch or Hieronymus Bosch, was a painter born in the northern part of the Duchy of Brabant, in what is now the Netherlands. He is the author of an exceptional body of work, remarkable both for the extraordinary inventiveness of his imagery and subject matter and for his technique. Erwin Panofsky described him as a distant and inaccessible artist within the Flemish painting tradition to which he belongs. The Marriage at Cana. The painting depicts the biblical scene of the wedding at Cana, where, according to the Gospel of John, 2:1-11, Jesus performs his first miracle by turning water into wine during a wedding feast. The central figures are likely Jesus, Mary, and the bride and groom, surrounded by wedding guests. Composition. The scene is filled with figures, distributed around a long banquet table. Jesus is positioned on the far right, distinguishable by his gesture and calm demeanor. The bride and groom sit more centrally, but without exaggerated emphasis, giving the scene a democratic, bustling tone that's typical of Northern Renaissance art. The Last Judgment. Subject and composition. The painting depicts the Christian Last Judgment, a scene where souls are judged by Christ and sent to either heaven or hell. Bosch presents a terrifying and detailed vision of the damnation of sinners and the torments of hell, a recurring theme in his oeuvre. Upper section. Christ, enthroned and radiant in red, presides over the final judgment. Flanked by angels, apostles, and the Virgin Mary, he raises his hands in a gesture of authority and division. This serene celestial realm is starkly contrasted by the horror below. Middle to lower section. A landscape filled with apocalyptic destruction, fires, and demonic torment. Human figures are tortured by monstrous creatures in surreal, nightmarish scenarios. The architecture is fantastical and crumbling, often organic or mechanical in nature, typical of Bosch's visionary imagination. The Garden of Earthly Delights. This surreal triptych is one of Bosch's most celebrated masterpieces. It's typically interpreted as a moral and religious allegory illustrating the progression of creation, temptation, and damnation. Left panel, Paradise/the Garden of Eden. Central panel, the Garden of Earthly Delights. Right panel, Hell/the Punishment of Sin. The Garden of Earthly Delights is not a straightforward moral tale. It is deeply complex, offering layers of religious allegory, psychological depth, and proto-surrealist fantasy. Triptych structure. Left equals innocence. Middle equals temptation. Right equals damnation. Bosch critiques humanity's fall through pleasure, using fantastic imagery to both seduce and disturb the viewer. Though it's filled with nudity and whimsy, the work ultimately warns against hedonism and spiritual blindness. The Seven Deadly Sins and the Four Last Things. T. This painting is arranged in a circular format, dominated by the representation of the seven deadly sins, each depicted in a wedge around a central eye-like figure. In the four corners of the painting, Bosch illustrates the four last things: death, judgment, heaven, and hell. At the very center is a large eye, with Christ emerging from the pupil. The Latin inscription around it reads, Cave Dominus vidit, beware, beware, the Lord sees. This striking image symbolizes divine omnipresence and omniscience, suggesting that no sin goes unnoticed. Each sin is depicted as a scene from daily life, emphasizing that sin is not distant or abstract, it is present in ordinary human behavior. Wrath, ira, a violent domestic fight. Envy, invidia, a man peering enviously at others' wealth and beauty. Greed, avaritia, a corrupt lawyer accepting a bribe. Gluttony, gula, excessive eating and drinking at a tavern. Sloth, aestia, a man dozing off while a priest visits. Lust, luxuria, a couple indulging in sensual pleasures. Pride, superbia, a woman admiring herself in the mirror. The Haywen Triptych. The triptych is composed of 3 panels, each contributing to a linear, moral narrative. Left panel, the fall of man. Center panel, the Haywen, the wagon of hay. Right panel, hell. The panels reflect the progression of humanity from innocence to sin and finally to damnation, a typical medieval Christian worldview that Bosch dramatizes with surreal and often grotesque detail. Left panel, the fall of man. This panel illustrates key moments from the book of Genesis. Central panel, the Haywin. This is the main scene and visual heart of the triptych. A giant hay wagon, symbolizing worldly wealth and vanity, is being dragged by demons across the landscape. Right panel, hell. The final panel depicts a vision of damnation. Those who chased after hay, worldly temptations, are now punished in a burning, infernal landscape. Christ carrying the cross. Christ, in the bottom right, carries the cross with a sorrowful but serene expression. His eyes meet the viewer directly, inviting contemplation and empathy. Around him is a crowd of grotesque, jeering faces, soldiers, elders, onlookers, distorted in anger, mockery, and cruelty. Their expressions are exaggerated and almost caricatural, creating a stark contrast with Christ's calm suffering. This contrast underscores the moral isolation of Christ, pure, silent endurance amidst a hostile, chaotic world. Crowd and composition. The crowd is tightly packed around Christ, creating a claustrophobic effect. They dominate the space, emphasizing how he is crushed not only by the cross but by human sin and violence. Each figure is rendered in sharp detail, individualized yet part of a collective mob, symbolizing collective guilt and the universality of sin. The background, with distant architecture and a lone figure in blue, provides depth and contrast to the oppressive foreground. Ecce homo. At the top of the stairs, Jesus stands humiliated, half-naked, crowned with thorns. His posture is passive, and his body appears frail and vulnerable. His head is slightly bowed, eyes nearly closed, conveying deep suffering and resignation. Pontius Pilate, dressed in extravagant oriental robes and a turban, presents Jesus to the crowd with a theatrical gesture. His body language contrasts with Jesus' meekness, suggesting pride or detachment. Behind Jesus, soldiers and priests observe with a mix of mockery and indifference. Their colorful garb and animated gestures emphasize worldly vanity and cruelty. The crowd. The lower section of the painting is filled with a dense, animated crowd, a mix of soldiers, nobles, and citizens. Their faces are highly individualized, often grotesque or exaggerated, a hallmark of Bosch's moral critique. Many gesture aggressively, some pointing or shouting. The mob mentality is palpable, portraying collective guilt and the spiritual blindness of mankind. Their rich clothing contrasts with Jesus' nearly naked body, reinforcing the tension between material wealth and spiritual truth. The crucifixion of Saint Julia, also interpreted as Saint Wilgefortis or a generic female martyr. This triptych explores the contrast between spiritual purity and worldly cruelty. The central martyr is serene despite her suffering, her upward gaze and flowing robes evoke divinity and grace. Central panel. Subject: a female saint is being crucified, her arms outstretched in a manner similar to Christ. She wears a long pink robe with ornate blue and red fabric, emphasizing her sanctity and possibly noble origins. Left panel. Dark and hellish imagery prevails. There is a burning city in the background, suggesting chaos, destruction, or damnation. A cloaked figure, possibly a monk or hermit, crouches in the foreground, absorbed in contemplation, possibly of the saint's sacrifice or the sinful world. Right panel. Depicts a calm coastal scene, with ships and towers, possibly referencing Julia's origin or her martyrdom on an island. Two men point upward, perhaps in conversation or witnessing the saint's execution. Thank you for watching this video. This is the beginning of a new way of seeing art, bringing great artists' works to life. Remember to subscribe to the channel, you'll be surprised. Leave me your comments, they are very important to me.